With a $2,000 monthly pension in many parts of the world, that amount is barely enough to get by. But if you brought that same money to Ukraine, a country living through constant uncertainty and endurance, would it be enough for you to truly live, not just survive? Then comes the question many people think about, but rarely say out loud. Ukrainian women, long seen as symbols of Eastern European beauty, are they still desirable today? Or has war faded everything? The truth is, they are still there. Not to be admired from a distance, but to keep living, working, and holding families together, while the ground beneath them remains unstable. But the hardest question isn't about money or beauty. If you build a life here, love a Ukrainian woman, and call this land home, would you be willing to stand by it? Not with words, but with responsibility and commitment, even when life is no longer romantic. Ukraine doesn't promise ease. It doesn't promise perfect safety, but it speaks to those who believe that a life with depth is worth more than a life built only on comfort. Ukraine. What kind of country is it today? Ukraine is still the second largest country in Europe, by land area stretching wider than most people realize. On the map, it looks vast and open. But today, the true size of Ukraine isn't measured in kilometers. It's measured in what the country has endured and how it continues to move forward afterward. After years of war, Ukraine's population has shrunk dramatically. Millions have left. Some sought safety. Some left to work abroad. And many, too many, were lost. This isn't just a demographic shift. It's a collective shock. Families split across borders. Cities quieter than they once were. Entire neighborhoods learning how to function with fewer people, fewer resources, and heavier memories. This is post-shock Ukraine, a society that has been hit hard but not frozen in place. Instead of collapsing, daily life has quietly reorganized itself. Schools reopen with fewer students. Businesses adapt to smaller workforces. Communities rely more on each other. Roles shift. Responsibilities change. People learn to do more with less, not out of ideology, but out of necessity. You see it in the rhythm of the streets. Life doesn't rush forward, but it doesn't stop either. Cafes still open in the morning. Markets still fill with fresh produce. Public transport runs on time. People plan their days knowing that stability is fragile, but still choosing to live fully within it. Ukraine today is not a country pretending everything is fine. It is a country adjusting, rebuilding, and redefining itself, not through slogans, but through everyday survival. And that context matters. Because to understand life here, you first have to understand what the country has been through and why it keeps going anyway. 2. Gender imbalance and how society adapts. One of the quiet realities of Ukraine today is a gender imbalance. There are simply more women than men. This didn't happen overnight, and it didn't come from a single cause. Years of war, lower male life expectancy, and long-term labor migration have gradually reshaped the country's demographic structure. But this isn't a story about numbers. It's a story about adaptation. When the balance shifts, society doesn't stop, it adjusts. Families reorganize themselves. Women take on broader responsibilities, not as a statement, but as a necessity. Many become the emotional center of households, the steady presence holding daily life together, while uncertainty remains in the background. You can feel this change in everyday interactions. Women are more visible in decision-making, more independent in how they live, work, and plan their futures. Not because tradition disappeared, but because reality demanded flexibility. Strength here is not loud. It's practical, quiet, enduring. This shift also changes dating and marriage. Relationships move more slowly. Expectations become more grounded. Romance still exists, but it's filtered through realism. People look for reliability, character, and emotional stability, not fantasies. Partnership becomes less about ideal images and more about shared resilience. Ukraine didn't choose this demographic change, but it is learning how to live within it. And that matters because when you understand how a society adapts to imbalance, you begin to understand the values it holds on to when circumstances force everything else to change. 3. Ukrainian women beauty may be the first impression, but it is not the foundation. For many outsiders, the first thing they notice about Ukrainian women is their appearance, their posture, the way they carry themselves. It's a surface-level impression, and it's easy to stop there. But if you stay longer, even briefly, you begin to understand that appearance is only the outer layer. Beneath it is something far more defining: discipline, self-reliance, and responsibility. These are not traits adopted for attention. They are learned through necessity. Ukrainian women are raised to manage, to adapt, to hold things together when circumstances become uncertain. Independence here is not a slogan. It's a daily skill. In a society shaped by instability, women often become the anchors of continuity. They work, they manage households, they care for children and elderly parents, and they do this while maintaining structure in everyday life, schedules, routines, and emotional balance, so that life doesn't unravel completely. During wartime, this role becomes even clearer. Many women carry the weight of both family and livelihood at once. They don't pause their lives waiting for stability to return. They create stability where they are, quietly, persistently. This is why reducing Ukrainian women to an image misses the point. They are not a destination. They are not an accessory to life here. They are the framework that allows society to keep functioning, holding families together, sustaining culture, and preserving a sense of normal life when uncertainty is constant. And once you see that, your perspective changes. What stands out most is no longer how they look, but how much responsibility they carry, and how calmly they carry it. 4. Urban life. Kyiv doesn't sleep, but it doesn't rush. Kyiv during the day, and Kyiv at night move at different rhythms, but they are not opposites. In the daytime, the city runs on routine. Offices open, students pack into the metro, small cafes turn on their lights early, where people grab a quick cup of hot coffee before stepping into the workday. There is no spectacle, no noise for show. Just a city doing what it needs to do in order to keep going. Kreshchatyk Street runs straight through the center like a backbone. By day, it carries a steady flow of people moving with purpose, but not urgency. Business suits, student backpacks, familiar urban faces. Everything looks ordinary, even though everyone knows that uncertainty still exists somewhere beyond the edges. When night falls, Kyiv doesn't turn into a stage of excess. The city simply softens. Warm lights reflect on the sidewalks. Cafes stay open. Conversations become quieter. People aren't trying to escape reality, they're holding on to a rare sense of normalcy. Nightlife here isn't about forgetting. It's about maintaining rhythm. And that quiet steadiness is what stands out most. Kyiv doesn't try to prove strength. It just keeps living slower, more careful, but still unmistakably human within a world that hasn't fully settled yet. 5. Cost of living low, but not cheap at any cost. One of the first things people notice about life in Ukraine is the cost. Food is affordable. A simple, well-cooked meal at a local cafe doesn't feel like a financial decision. It feels normal. Fresh vegetables, bread, dairy, seasonal produce are easy to find and reasonably priced, not because they're inferior, but because they're local and part of everyday life. Getting around is just as straightforward. Public transportation is inexpensive and reliable. The metro buses and trams run on time and connect the city efficiently. Taxis cost a fraction of what you'd expect in the US or Western Europe. Here, movement isn't a luxury. It's a basic service designed to keep the city functioning. Housing follows the same pattern. Rent is lower, especially compared to major Western cities, but it's not cheap in a careless way. Apartments are lived in practical and functional. People value warmth, location, and efficiency more than excess space or status symbols. You don't pay for hype, you pay for what you actually use. And this is where perspective matters. Ukraine is affordable not because life here is worth less, but because average incomes are lower. Prices reflect local realities, not global speculation. The value is still there in the food, the services, the infrastructure, but it's scaled to a different economic rhythm. So when people say Ukraine is cheap, that's only half the story. The truth is simpler and more honest. Ukraine is affordable because it hasn't turned everyday life into a luxury product. 6. Living in Ukraine as a foreigner. Living in Ukraine as a foreigner is not an impulsive decision. It begins with paperwork. Visas, residency registration, administrative procedures. Many of them still require you to show up in person on time with the right documents. Things move more slowly than the fully digital systems common in the West. Not because they're inefficient, but because the system here values presence and verification. If you lack patience, this will be your first real test. Language is the next challenge. In central Kyiv, you'll encounter English. But step even slightly outside the core, and Ukrainian and Russian become the languages of daily life. You may ask a question in English and receive an answer in the local language. Not out of unwillingness to help, just reality. Learning a few basic phrases isn't about politeness here. It's about making daily life workable. In return, the essentials function surprisingly well. The metro is inexpensive, clean, and punctual, a system many wealthier cities would envy. Internet service is fast and reliable at costs that often surprise foreigners. Life here isn't flashy, but it's dependable. For healthcare, most foreigners choose private clinics. The process is straightforward, the prices far lower than in the US or Western Europe, and the quality sufficient for everyday medical needs. As for security, major cities like Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa remain relatively safe if you understand the context and follow local guidance. So who is Ukraine for people who are calm, who can wait, who can adapt? Those who don't need everything instantly, but need life to be stable enough to build on. Ukraine is not for the impatient, but for the right temperament. It's a place where life can slowly find its rhythm. 7. Ukraine beyond Kyiv, where life slows down. Once you leave Kyiv, Ukraine reveals a different rhythm. Quieter, less pressured. Not because life is perfect, but because people here choose to slow down. These places don't promise paradise. They offer something more realistic: zones of emotional safety, where you can breathe more evenly in a world that's still unsettled. Lviv is often the first stop. A city with Central European character, cobblestone streets, old cafes, and music-filled squares. The war feels farther away here, not because it's forgotten, but because daily life is carefully preserved. Reading, coffee conversation, small rituals that protect a sense of normalcy. Further south and west, Ternopil and Ivano-Frankivsk feel calm and grounded. These are university towns where families send their children for a stable education. Life revolves around morning markets, school hours, afternoon park walks, and short weekend trips to the mountains. Nothing flashy, but steady. Near the European border, Uzhhorod and Chernivtsi offer yet another atmosphere. Architecture influenced by Hungary, Romania, and the old Austro-Hungarian era. Local wine, riverside cafes, tree-lined streets. Life here doesn't rush, and it doesn't need to. These places aren't for those chasing excitement. They're for people seeking stability, a rhythm that can be sustained over time. Here, Ukraine doesn't appear as a destination to consume, but as a place to stay quiet enough to think, real enough to keep living. 8. Culture and festivals. Why Ukraine has never disappeared. In Ukraine, festivals are not performances. They are not scheduled entertainment. They are acts of remembrance, quiet agreements among people that life, identity, and community will continue no matter the circumstances. Take Malanka, celebrated in mid-January according to the old calendar. On the surface, it looks playful, masks, costumes, singing from house to house. But beneath it is something older and deeper. It's a ritual of renewal, a way for communities to walk together, knock on doors, and remind one another that another year has begun, and that no one is facing it alone. Then there is Kupala night, held in the warmth of summer. Bonfires are lit near rivers and forests. People jump over flames, not for spectacle, but for symbolism, letting go of fear, bad luck, and what no longer serves them. Flower wreaths are placed on water drifting slowly under the night sky. It's not about nostalgia. It's about staying connected to nature, to ancestry, and to a time when life moved in harmony with the seasons. And in winter comes Orthodox Christmas, celebrated on January 7th. There is little commercial shine here. No rush, no excess. Homes glow softly with candlelight. Families gather. Churches fill with quiet singing. In the cold, people walk the streets together, carrying warmth, not in decorations, but in shared ritual and memory. These festivals exist for one reason, above all others, to affirm existence. When history becomes heavy and the future uncertain, culture becomes the anchor. Through songs, symbols, and shared moments, Ukrainians remind themselves and each other that they are still here, still connected, still carrying forward what was given to them. This is why Ukraine has never disappeared, not because it was untouched, but because its culture refused to let it fade. 9. Vyshyvanka, a symbol of identity and endurance. At first glance, a vyshyvanka looks simple: linen or cotton, red and black threads, clean lines. But in Ukraine, this embroidered shirt is not clothing. It is memory worn on the body. Each region speaks its own visual language. In the West, patterns are bold and grounded, echoing mountains and forests. In the South, lighter colors reflect open land and water. In the Carpathians, stitches are dense and heavy, shaped by a life lived close to nature. Locals can often tell where someone is from just by looking at the embroidery, something rarely preserved in modern Europe. Every symbol carries meaning. Diamonds for protection, wheat for harvest and continuity, flowers for love, life, and renewal. These are not decorations chosen at random. They are messages stitched slowly, deliberately, with intention. What makes the vyshyvanka powerful is not its age, but its continuity. It is worn at weddings, baptisms, funerals, and national holidays. Parents pass them to children. Grandmothers still embroider shirts by hand, sometimes taking weeks or months to complete a single piece. Each stitch becomes a quiet act of care, patience, and belief in the future. In a country shaped by loss and uncertainty, the vyshyvanka does something remarkable. It holds identity steady. It says we were here before, we are here now, and we will remain. This is why the vyshyvanka endures, not as a museum artifact, but as a living symbol of culture carried forward and of a people who refuse to let their story unravel. Ukraine doesn't promise wealth. It doesn't promise an easy path. And it certainly doesn't promise perfect safety. What it offers instead is something quieter and far rarer in today's world. It offers a society that hasn't grown numb. People still look each other in the eye. Conversations carry weight. Relationships aren't disposable, and daily life hasn't been reduced to convenience and speed. Here you feel the passing of time instead of rushing through it. Ukraine asks something of you. It asks for presence, patience, and commitment. But in return, it gives you the feeling that you are living with intention, not simply moving from one obligation to the next. So the real question isn't whether Ukraine is rich, easy, or perfectly safe. It isn't. The real question is more personal than that. If you had to choose between comfort and the feeling of truly being alive, which would you choose? Please hit the like button to support the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journeys. There are still many countries left for us to explore together.